It affected me in a way, I don't know, that I didn't really see coming, given what happens in the epilogue and the themes that the last 20 minutes convey. Daniel, when you first read Justin's screenplay, did you have the same kind of visceral reaction to it and how it affected you?
Yes and no. You kind of think about it, and your own images come to mind, and then obviously when you get to work, you start combining them with everybody else. And Lucas, very strong thoughts about the way the end of the movie should be. I knew I wanted it to feel as emotional as possible, and you can sort of just try and aim for that, and if it comes out.
This is hard to believe, but this is only your second published screenplay, correct?
Yeah.
Following Challengers, which also came out this year. Very different films, both directed by Luca Guadagnino. Now, Justin, Luca came to you during the making of Challengers, right? Given that he found the rights for Queer finally became available, and then he came to you saying, "I want you to write this." Is that how it went down?
I think he came to me before the rights were available.
Okay.
But then he figured it out. Yeah, we were in the middle of making Challengers, and on set one day he just handed me this book and said, "Read this tonight and tell me if you need to edit it for me." And so I went home and read it that night, and I called him immediately and said yes. And I had no idea how I was going to do it or how it would work as a film, but I knew that it was a book that had been really important to Luca, that he had wanted to make into a film since he read it as a teenager. And so I just knew that it was important to make this movie, and anything I could do to make that happen, or help make that happen, was something I needed to do.
Yeah, this is a book by William S. Burroughs, and it's an unfinished work. Did that excite you, or about the opportunity to add to it, or did that make you a little trepidatious about taking on such a master author?
Both. I mean, I felt this tremendous sense of honor that Luca would trust me with this, and also this tremendous sense of responsibility, because on the one hand, I had Luca's dream of this movie to live up to, and also it's a legendary book by a legendary author who means a great deal to a great many people. So that was very present in the early stages of me thinking about writing this, and then at a certain point I just got so excited by the idea of what Luca was going to do with the movie that kind of overcame the fear.
Now, Daniel, you met Luca 20 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, long before Call Me By Your Name kind of put him on the map as a tour to be reckoned with. What was it about him that struck you at the time and made you keep in touch all these years?
I've read the story has been kind of slightly embellished. I was drunk at a party, I met him, we probably spoke to each other, I don't really remember. I remember thinking he was very nice, and and we may have said, let's work together one day, but I can't tell you with my hand on my heart. I could just make it up, which is easy to do.
So you weren't like seeking a project to work with?
I mean, well, except when Lucas started becoming, Luca, exactly. I mean, just experiencing his movies and how different they are. And every time that he does a movie, he pushes boundaries in a way that I just find incredibly exciting and rare amongst filmmakers. And so, yeah, I just was desiring deeply to work with him.
How familiar are you each with William's work and also his life, given how obviously autobiographical Queer is?
A little more now.
A little more now.
A lot more now.
A lot more now.
I had read Naked Lunch when I was a teenager, and I had read the Ahe letters, and I'd been familiar with the persona of Burroughs, that was very present in popular culture, which was a persona that, to some extent, he very consciously cultivated, which was, at least to my teenage eyes, it was this very cool guy, and a very sort of gruff and sometimes macho guy. And I was very surprised when I read Queer to find, first of all, that for the most part it was this very straightforward love story between these two complicated people. But then on the other hand, there was this character, William Lee, who I knew was in some ways an alter ego of Burroughs, but that he was this very sweet and tender and at times very embarrassing guy, who, didn't know when to shut up and would say the wrong thing and would get stuck in the middle of the room because he was going to approach the object of his desire, and then he goes away. And that guy all of a sudden felt like somebody I could reach out and touch, and somebody, more importantly, that I knew how to write.
Not a lot. I'd read Donkey. I probably pretended to read Naked Lunch, but probably carried around a copy of it with me sometimes. But I hadn't really sort of delved into it, and my kind of very greedy attraction to this part was just the kind of complexity of it, and all the things that Justin so eloquently just said. But again, I just maybe repeating what Justin said about his sort of this gruff human being that we all kind of know from the sort of I think they're on YouTube now, videos of poetry programs that used to be on network television way back then. I felt that was a sort of front for something, a front for. There's an expression: the bigger the front, the bigger the back. So it's like, what's going on? And that's really, and then there was little bits of, footage of him relaxing, more relaxed, which are rare to see, where he was sort of high and shooting guns and having a good time. And that's kind of the person I wanted to tune into. And plus, as Justin said, it's the novel is very much more of a much more extravagant character. He called it the routine. What is that, right? The kind of
he keeps doing these long monologues.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. To kind of entertain, to be an entertainer, to be a jester, to be and then the kind of the complexity of him as gun-toting cowboy walking down the street to teenager in love. I mean, how great is that?
He's so lovelorn as well, and he just wears that on his sleeves so nakedly. How did you access that emotion for the character and to just tap into that for the making of the entire film?
I just recognize so much in him, and maybe not in such an extreme way, but just so much of what he was going through, and I just felt I've been there. I've been that teenager walking into a party, looking for love, feeling so awkward, nothing else. And I just feel like, and in the relationship, and Lucas said this, but he is the kind of younger character. Alison is the more mature kind of, let's just wait and see, kind of, but let's see how this goes. And he's the one going around like a sick puppy.
Perfect way to describe it. A big way the script departs from the book is that the book doesn't end with them actually taking ayahuasca, correct? So you dreamed up that scenario. Was that your idea, or did Luca have you come to that?
Well, it was this really beautiful way that we got to work on this movie, which was that we were together in Boston making Challengers, and a couple weeks before I actually started putting pen to paper, Luca and I just got to talk a lot and hang out a lot, and watch movies and read other books, and think about what this movie could be. And really early on, we talked about how in the book ends somewhat abruptly. They get to the jungle and they get to Cotter's hut, and it seems for a moment like they might get the Yahe, and then that door is really quickly shut, and they descend back into civilization, not having gotten what they came for. And Luca and I were really in sync about this idea of what if we opened the door and we saw what was on the other side? How would that affect this dynamic? And it didn't feel like a given to us that would solve anything for them necessarily. They might react differently, and there might be genuine horror in getting what you think you want. And that possibility was really exciting to me. So I knew all of that even as I was writing the earlier parts of the script that are more or less faithful to the book.
That seems obviously so visual. How did it read in the screenplay? For you when you first read it, and also
I mean, it's not as magnificent.
It's not.
I don't remember, how did it read?
It's pretty short. I mean, I wrote like it's like half a page or something. That actual Yahe dance, that's all Luca and our choreographers and Daniel and Drew, honestly. I mean, you can probably speak more to that process than me, but
I mean, it's the dance number at the end of the movie. It's like, I mean, we had Luca very early on described what he felt about it, what he thought we should be doing. And, Cotter in the book is a male character, and we've got the incredible Leslie Manville to come and play Dr. Cotter, and she sort of represents so much more because she sort of leads them into this, and maybe in a maternal way. She's the hope, I feel, and there's huge hope that she goes, no, you've opened the door now, there's no point changing, all of those things she said, beautiful things she said. And we had Sol Leon and Paul Lightfoot, these two incredible choreographers who basically got two very stiff actors to loosen up a bit. And Drew and I, in fact, met 2 weeks before we started shooting in New York and started rehearsing the piece then, and actually did it all the way through. We shot it right at the end. So when our son is off, I think how tight our hamstrings are. But it also was a wonderful way to get to know Drew because, rolling around on the floor with somebody does it.
Yeah. That will connect you. What was it like to watch the sequence for the first time, either at the premiere when you first saw the movie, given score, the special effects, the way that it's shot?
Well, we saw it very early on, and it's very edited down as a complete. We did shoot the whole thing in one take, I think, right at the end of the night. You should know that we're covered in coffee because we're outside. And we had to kind of roll around the floor, and the floor was gritty, and we were going to get cut up. And someone said, "I know what to do." So they shipped in I don't know how many pounds of coffee, and let me tell you, you can absorb it through your skin. What a high.
Going from that sequence to do a little full circle moment and go back to the ending of the movie. It incorporates aspects of Burroughs' life. I'm sure many people here are familiar with the fact that he accidentally, I guess we'll never really know, killed his wife in much the same manner that William does his lover in the movie in that sequence. How did you come to that ending? It's such a unique, surreal sequence, and it does so much, especially if you're a fan of the author for him.
Yeah, well, Luca and I were very intentional from the beginning that we were making a movie about this character, William Lee, and not about the man, William S. Burroughs, because there are overlap and there are things that they share in common, but there's also a lot of intention in what Burroughs chose not to include about his life when it comes to William Lee. For example, Burroughs, the man, was in Mexico with his wife and kids. And William, in Queer, there's very little mention of them except in kind of vague dream stuff. At the same time, Queer, the book, is not possible without this horrific event. And Burroughs had talked about how that event really haunted the writing of Queer and almost was the thing that forced him to acknowledge that he was a writer. And so it felt like we couldn't do justice to the book, Queer, without somehow incorporating that into it. But at the same time, we didn't want to ever make it possible for the audience to mistake this character for this man, because we weren't making a biopic,
I'm curious, Jenny, how did you interpret this sequence when you read it, knowing that you'd have to act it?
Like much of the movie, I didn't think about it very much, apart from doing what I had to do was the work beforehand. Either rehearsals for the dance or rehearsals for the character and learning the lines and reading up about William S. Burroughs and forgetting about it. And get to set and it's all bets are off. You just turn up. I try and, apart from the dance was clearly something very carefully rehearsed, but you just, you have to kind of go with as open mind as possible.
On that note, and it's so
Open mind.
hello.